That was beautiful.
So, thought we would spend a little time as we're talking about the Proverbs. I don't know that there are a lot of Proverbs specifically about gratitude, but there are some that maybe I was able to identify, and you may have read, that I think touch on what it is to be thankful and touch on some things that are pretty important as we consider how to be thankful people and grateful people. What do you think gets in the way most of gratitude? What keeps us from being grateful?
It's not enough.
So, what's that?
When it's not enough.
I was thinking greedy, same thing.
Okay, so when there's not enough, right? And so it's easy when there's not enough. What do you focus on? Well, there's not enough, and it may even seem silly and counterproductive to talk about gratitude when there's not enough. Um, and I mean, there's something to that, right? That we don't just dismiss the fact that people are, James says, don't just say to somebody who's hungry and cold, be warmed and fed, right? Be thankful for what you've got. That's not the way we're supposed to respond when people don't have enough. We're supposed to share and be generous. But sometimes that does get in the way. However, I would also point out that there are people who have much less than we have and find ways to be grateful, right?
I agree.
Yeah. So it's not just that there's not enough. I mean, I understand that, and I think you're right, but it isn't just that, right? There's more to our lack of gratitude than just not having enough or not having what we think is enough. So what are some other things that you think maybe contribute to not being grateful?
Sometimes people's ego gets in the way. They feel like, well, I work really hard
for
what I have, and I didn't take a vacation. I've done all this, and so God didn't really. What did God have to do with it? I'm the one who worked for it, and so maybe we just don't recognize that our ability to work hard comes from God. Our health that would allow us to work. So I think
the opportunities that we have, right, to better ourselves. Not everybody has those opportunities that we have to take it, that we can take advantage of to better ourselves. Not everybody is given those. Yeah, absolutely. Ego gets in the way. Sometimes maybe the word might be privilege. I deserve this, or I deserve this thing, and it's not right that I don't have it. Yeah, Josh, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I think it's not always some great character fault or something malicious. Sometimes I think we just move too fast.
Yeah.
When we slow down and be grateful.
Yeah.
We something resolves and we're on to the next thing, trying to solve the next problem so fast that we don't ever take the time to think about, what God did for us.
I think that's right. I think very often it is just come down to just not taking the time, just not noticing, not paying attention to God doing something, especially when maybe he does it as he often does, as he most often does, perhaps, through somebody else, right? We get sick and we pray and we go to the doctor and the doctor does something and we're better. And so we go, well, so glad I went to see that doctor. and then we're on to the next thing, as you say, Josh, and forget that, that doctor deserves our gratitude, but so does God in those situations.
Hence, we see the wisdom of Abraham Lincoln, who instituted Thanksgiving. He said he want the whole country to stop what they're doing and give thanks to God, not just to be thankful for their blessings.
Yeah.
Today, I think a lot of people are just thankful in general.
Right.
They don't believe. believe your blessings come from God, but and still, it's a good thing though.
Yeah.
And he's trying to heal the country from the Civil War, and it's done a lot of good.
Yeah. And I mean, he was onto something in that gratitude can be very healing, right?
Yeah.
Gratitude can cover over and help heal a lot of wounds if we can remember to be thankful and to let that affect the way we deal with one another, the way we approach God, the things we do in our lives, the priorities we set.
But if we're not thankful to God, who are we thankful? Yeah.
Some people are just thankful in general to their families, maybe government, whatever authority they see blessing, and maybe their boss at work.
Where do those things come from?
I know. Oh, they're superficial, all right. They're really missing the ball. I had a boss who used to give me a turkey every year. I was thankful for that. His generosity. He didn't have to do that. A turkey in every pot. That was his philosophy. That was nice. It was good to be thankful for that. But always went beyond that, though. God blessed him with the resources to give the turkeys out. Now he spent thousands of dollars every year giving out turkeys.
I've thought a lot about that verse. Every good and perfect gift comes from above.
Yeah.
And it's awesome if you look back at your life. There's no accidents.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's ever good that happened to you is a blessing from God.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Yeah.
That's our perspective.
Well, that's the
Not-
scripture.
The Bible's perspective, but most people out there in society aren't going to see it that way, unfortunately.
And maybe gratitude by people who don't necessarily believe in a benevolent God is at least a first step toward recognizing there is good in the world. There are good things that happen. There are good things that come to us in our lives, and maybe that can be a first step toward people, beginning to understand God and see Him in their lives and come to worship Him. Not always, but maybe sometimes.
But
Yeah.
I thought in this way because whom are we thankful to always? We're always thankful to individuals simple because every opportunity you have to meet somebody who smiles at you, that means you have a love of God from that fellow to yourself. Some of us, that is how we think about it. Praying for myself and praying for my community, my country, and this thing. As a Christian, that means I felt always what God is doing and how protection He is giving to me and my family. That's the reason why I always call Him, because I cannot see God face to face doing something to me. But I felt Him always when I met my fellow human being. The acts from that fellow show the God attitude toward me. So I'm always grateful to those I met at other workplaces or wherever I am, wherever in location I find myself in the moment. The way somebody will pass to receive me, and the way I approach somebody, the way he will receive me. I found out from that fellow either he's a God fellow to me or he's not. At that moment, I feel very grateful. So
I really appreciate that. I think that's right, and I think that's really a good way to see the interactions that we have around us. Sometimes a smile from someone, or a kindness from someone, or a little compassion, whether that person, whether that person's faith or not, whether you don't know anything about that person or not. If Alan's right, if the scriptures are right, and every good and perfect gift comes from the Lord, right? That kindness came from Him. That was a sign of His love and His grace. Maybe that's part of what it means, right? That we are made in the image of God. That we kind of, whether we want to or not, sometimes we sort of represent God and touch people on His behalf in our world. I really appreciate that. I think that's a great way to look at it. Maybe we'll change the way we if we can think that way, maybe changes the way we interact with the people around us. You know, it helps us to be more appreciative.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, that every kindness or attitude or blessing that I can show to other people, the Bible talks about how that honors God, how that is gives praise to God. And I, it's nice to think about it that way, because it's not that I've got to walk around with any false humility. It moves gratitude internally, moves me to be kind, or it moves me to be thoughtful, or to give the smile. And it may not be saying thank you or showing actions of gratitude, but that goes back to God. And I think it's kind of cool the way it just keeps revolving in our world, that I can say thank you, but I can also do acts of gratitude that goes back to God, whether I say thank you or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody sent me a card once and said, every blessing I receive from you is honoring God. And I thought, wow, I didn't think about it like that, but okay. And because it's true, right?
One of those cards you keep, right? There's a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good.
We've all heard that saying, we need to have an attitude of gratitude.
Right.
We've heard it so many times, you don't like to hear it, but so that's pointing though to the fact that gratitude and thankfulness is a type of attitude. And if we're not being thankful, as you asked originally, maybe that shows we have a negative attitude there that we need to change, because we can change our attitude. And that's a decision we can make. So that to me is a primary thing. If somebody's always negative and can't be thankful, they need to check their attitude real quick.
Gratitude really can become a habit and a discipline. I think, you don't always feel grateful, right? But you always can make a choice to praise God and to say thanks and to dwell on and to think about the things that you are grateful for. That decision you can make, even in the middle of what your things you're not particularly grateful for. You can always make the choice, and I don't mean to paper over the things that you'd like to change. God wants to hear that too, but we can choose, I think, a habit of being grateful and looking for the good and looking for the things to thank God for in our lives.
And that's what I was going to say. Gratitude makes you look. If you're a grateful person, you're looking for things to say thank you for. And I do think it's a discipline, but I also think it's a discipline. I think half of my gratitude comes from, I hate to say it this way, but it's true. As a kid, I was made to say thank you.
Yeah.
It was the manners were taught. Well, what are you going to say? And of course, you say please. And what are you going to say? You say thank you. And it just makes you notice what we take for granted, that we don't have to be walking around like we're privileged, that, oh, you held the door for me, thank you, or you stopped, thank you. That it teaches you to notice the kindnesses of other people. But it is something I think that's taught. We either pick it up from those we're around or the way we were raised.
Josh is so good at saying thank you. I mean, all the time. He just constantly does that. He's constantly. So his mother trained him well. Obviously didn't have that much to do with it, but she trained him well. That you say thank you and you appreciate what people do, and you try to notice those things and try to pay attention and honor them. And I think that's a good habit for us all to develop and a discipline. Discipline sounds like a bad word. Like you're almost apologetic. I was made to be thankful. I was trained. I was taught to be thankful. But that's exactly right, and that's exactly how it works. You learn it because you're trained to do it. Jacob, I think you're muted. Were you trying to say something?
Yeah, like we are referring to just, I think the kids sometimes is that way. Some of them have a lot of appreciation at their family, parents, the attitude of their parents toward them is they are very grateful. A little bit, they say thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a good thing to learn. And
yes, a lot.
To develop. life.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we all, we're all God's children, so we're always still learning, right, and still growing, and and so yeah, we need.
Really a worldview, I guess. There's some people that just have a worldview of grumpiness.
Yeah. No, it's true. That's true. And it's so easy, especially I think because, there's some people in our world, right, who make a lot of money off fear and anger and hostility, and so those are the things that get sort of emphasized and lifted up and highlighted. The reasons we have to be afraid or angry or whatever. And again, sometimes we got to talk about those, but yeah, I think we can also develop this worldview of being grateful for the good things around us, the good things we see of God, and of the good things we see in other people. Let's look at a couple of these proverbs, and we don't have to spend much time on them or even get through all of them, but I think most of them are pretty straightforward. But I think maybe they'll just kind of help us to sort of internalize some of this. The first one that came to mind to me, first two actually, 16:8 and then 17:1. Proverbs 16:8 says, "Better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice." I think sometimes in gratitude, as we've talked about, how much is enough, right? How much is enough, and what will you trade for more, right? And so the writer of Proverbs says, it's much better to have a little, but there's righteousness, there's justice, there's the kind of life that you should be living, that honors God and that acknowledges Him, versus forgetting that kind of life, leaving that kind of life behind. And would you rather be wealthy and godly, or poor and godly, or wealthy and ungodly? The Proverbs say, every time, choose poor and godly if it comes to that. And he's not saying that it's just one or the other, right? He's not saying it. He's not saying you can't have more and still be godly. He's just saying if you got to choose those things. 17:1 is just, I think, a little more picturesque. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. Don't you like that? You can be thankful for that dry crust because you see the peace around you. You live in a house in which there's peace, and there's calm, and there's compassion and kindness and love, versus strife. Strife's not a word we use much. What's what's a synonym for strife? Conflict. Yeah. The idea of being, we take that dry crust every time because it comes with the peace that we're looking for. And I think also that proverb to me kind of maybe suggests a correlation between always wanting more and the generation of conflict and strife. If you're always wanting more, if you're never content, a lot of these proverbs are about contentment and satisfaction with what you have. If you're always striving, always reaching out for more, there's, often that causes problems in your relationships with other people.
Well, it's not just wanting that causes problems; it's having that causes problems.
Yes.
I mean, you would think that the wealthiest and the most well-off among us would be the happiest people on earth, but they're not, and they would have stable personal lives. But I mean, just the fact that celebrity gossip columns exist should tell you all you need to know.
Right.
There's strife that comes just from having a lot and disagreeing with with those around you about how to use that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. It's hard to argue with, isn't it? What's the old adage that everybody hears and says they believe, and then tries is money won't buy happiness. Yeah, well, sure like to see if it will, and so everybody tries it, and guess what? It doesn't necessarily. Poverty doesn't buy happiness either, but the whole idea is we sometimes think that having more is going to solve the problems. Having more is going to make things better, instead of embracing what we do have and trying to develop and create lives of contentment and joy and peace with the people around us, and kindness and compassion, and just recognizing that, okay, I may not have everything I want, but that doesn't mean I can't be grateful for what I have, and it doesn't mean I can't care for the people around me and be a blessing to the people around me. And I think that's what the Proverbs are sort of holding up there. What kind of life do you want to create? And part of that is going to be whether you can be content in the situation you're in, whether you can be content with that dry crust sometimes. Not that any of us are going to necessarily go home and have to eat a dry crust tonight. You get the point, right?
It's interesting, isn't it, that strife has a negative connotation? Striving doesn't as much. Scripture uses that in places for perseverance.
Yeah.
Running the race of faith. It's the same word.
Yeah. What are you striving for? Is I guess the question, right? What is it that you're reaching out to accomplish and to grasp and to take hold of? I like this proverb, and it's Proverb 25. It's 25:16. I just scroll past it. Proverbs 25:16. Somebody read that for us, if you can get there.
I can read it. 25:16. If you find honey, eat just enough. Too much of it, and you will vomit.
I always kind of that's a vivid one, isn't it? What does it mean? What's it say? If you find honey, eat just enough. Too much of it, and you'll vomit. Is it just a dietary advice?
It might be teaching moderation.
Moderation.
Too much of a good thing is not a good thing.
Okay.
That's probably a proverb in there somewhere.
It's interesting to me that in the proverb you find the honey, right? It's like, it's a bonus. You've stumbled across, Winnie the Pooh's stash or something, and you're excited because you found the honey. You found this good thing, and because you're so excited, you just dig in. You just lay into it, right? And you just eat too much, and it sickens you, makes you sick, it makes you vomit. It's a very vivid picture of kind of what human nature can be sometimes. That we just want to keep on. We just want to keep on collecting. We just want to keep on devouring. We just want to keep on tearing into these good things in life, not recognizing maybe that that's not what we're made for, and that's not what life is. Jesus talks about how a person's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions, right? Including their honey, I guess. That's not what life is. Life isn't about wolfing down as much as you can, as quickly as you can. That's kind of what went through my mind as I read that. What do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's very American in our culture to be greedy. It's kind of feeding on that a little bit. And more is better. That's in our culture. It's just there.
Yeah.
People buy it hook, line, and sinker. Fortunately, once you read Proverbs, kind of give you a better perspective. But a lot of people are into that, you know. The person that dies with the most toys wins.
Right.
I've heard that saying before. I've seen bumper stickers like that kind of thing, you know. I'm spending all my children's inheritance, you know. Like they're making a big deal, you know, out of spending and living it up. I think they'll regret that someday.
One of the things that comes to my mind is how people in other countries remark sometimes when they visit America the portions of food that that Americans tend to eat, right? The ways that we, you know, the large portions that tend to be, you know, in our restaurants, and maybe even in our homes, but certainly in our restaurants and you know, and I look, sometimes it's great to really, you know, really enjoy a meal, but there is there is gluttony, right? That is a thing too, and that it can be for food and it can be for other things as well, and we can just sort of develop this acquisitive nature, not inquisitive, acquisitive, where we're always acquiring, we're always wanting more, we're always trying to get more, and as quickly as we can.
Well, that's why 40% of the people in our country are obese. 40%, right, Michelle? That's a figure I just saw, and it's getting worse, not getting better. And that's why you're going to see this new administration. I think they're going in Washington. They're appointing somebody to work on getting people's weight down, and they're coming out with some new drugs too. You're going to see that coming out to reduce people's weight, and they're trying to get it part of Medicare. You know, part of our insurance.
That's a pretty American thing too.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
You know, I need
works.
to lose weight, but I don't want to eat less and exercise. So
they say the benefits outweigh the cost. You know, that's what the argument is. You know, these drugs cost $1,000 a month. They can bring your weight right down, but maybe they'll save you from being diabetic, see, and having a heart attack, you know, and all these other things. So what they're doing is comparing the two, and they're saying it's better to reduce the weight down if we can do it. And so you're going to see that coming up.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, you know, been a constant push for that, and
Yeah,
you know,
that's
doctors have been saying that for a long time.
I don't think it's because I don't think it's because our government cares about us as much as it's a money making thing. So I'm not
right. And,
I'm not going to buy into that.
And we've been, you know, doctors have been saying that for years. We need,
For years. So
we need. That's something we need.
Yeah.
To work on. And I think it also has spiritual effects to have that sort of acquisitive attitude where you're always wanting more, always wanting to wolf down as much as you can, as quickly as you can. I think there are spiritual effects to that as well.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about just being debaucherous, right?
Yeah.
That is telling us to we can have, just because we can have doesn't mean we should, because some of the onus is on us individually to manage.
Yeah.
What our thoughts, we can be debaucherous in that, our attitude, what we eat. And just because you have, I think there should be a measured everything.
Yeah.
In our speech and our actions and the things that we eat, the things we acquire. I try hard not to shop a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's another good example, right?
Yeah.
You know, that you know, shopping
just
is
because
so
I
easy
can,
now, right? You don't have to go out your house.
Right.
and you can so easily just develop this and stoke this desire for more. And I think it creates all sorts of issues, creates patience issues. I don't have what I want right now, and I can't wait for it. You know, I can't put it off. I need it right this second, or you know, something's going to happen. So you develop a lack of patience. You develop a disdain for other people who might want some of the same things you want, and you know, and you turn life into this zero sum kind of game, and you kind of forget about the slow growth of spirituality and faith and the ways in which God's work in you takes time and takes patience and takes a long-term commitment till you're just kind of always grasping, always wolfing down the honey.
Well, and the second part of that is that the fact that you can be addicted to the chase, the acquiring rather than the having.
Yeah.
That's true of a lot of things people collect, paintings and porcelain. What are you gonna do with that stuff? It sits there. Once you have it, you don't do anything with it. There's nothing interesting about looking at it, I guess, after a certain point, but finding the next piece, going through the motions to acquire it, that's the high.
Yeah.
And so that's never satisfied. You're always on to the next thing.
You don't properly appreciate the blessings that God does give you. When you're always looking for the next blessing, you're always wanting more of it.
I went through that with my stamp collection. Well, it's fun getting new things and sorting them, but once they're put away, what are you doing?
Yeah. Let's see. I want to look at.
It's interesting when you do see people that finally realize that. It takes a long time, but you'll see that somebody's collection is finally being liquidated through Sotheby's or Christie's or something like that after they've spent a lifetime acquiring it, because that was all fun.
Sorry.
If we're not careful, we can even treat our own lives that way and never be satisfied with what we have, what progress we've made with God's help, and keep looking on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Because Christianity is to some extent about that.
Yeah.
Chasing a standard you're never going to meet, but perpetually dissatisfied is not the right attitude in response to that.
Yeah, and I mean, and Christ has already met that standard for us. Right? We want to be like him, but Christ has already met the standard for us. He's already given us what we need for life and godliness, Peter says. So we're just living into that, and that's what we're about. We always wanting to be better. We're always wanting to grow, but that's a different thing than always wanting to acquire for ourselves and for our own interests and for our own satisfaction. And 28:25 says, "The greedy stir up conflict, but those who trust in the Lord will prosper." Greed is kind of what we're talking about, right? And greed is sort of the opposite of the flip side of gratitude is always wanting. You're always wanting more. What we've been talking about and how that stirs up conflict. We've already talked about. But those who trust in the Lord will prosper. What do you think about that promise? That statement. Those who trust in the Lord will prosper.
What do it mean?
That's what I'm asking. What does it mean? If you trust in the Lord, you'll do well.
I think it means prospering in every way, really, but primarily in the attitudes of Christ. We will grow in the likeness of God.
Yeah.
And that's no easy feat, right? That's quite challenging to grow in that character and then those values. Yeah. But if we trust God, we can. And I think we also prosper financially in other ways as well. But primarily, I think it's about the likeness of Christ.
One thing that strikes me is if you ask somebody who really does have faith and trusts in God and really does lean on him in their life, and you ask that person, do you feel like you have prospered? They're going to say yes. They're going to say, yeah, I'm doing okay. I feel good. I feel like I'm doing well. Whatever their standard of living might be, they're going to have that degree of contentment and that degree of satisfaction. That doesn't mean everything's always going to be just like you want it all the time, right? That's not the promise of the prophet. The promise is you will grow in Christ. You'll grow in faith. You'll grow in your relationships with the people around you. You'll grow in love for the Lord. You'll grow in contentment. Paul talks about, I've learned how to be content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, right? Philippians. I've learned how to. You got to learn it for one thing. That's something I take away from Paul there that sometimes gets overlooked. Paul says, "I've learned it. It didn't come naturally. It's not intuitive, but I've learned how to be content. I've learned how to trust. I've learned how, no matter what's going on, I've learned how to do well. And how. What's his bottom line? What did he get to? I've learned how to be content in every situation.
Learn how to be grateful.
Whether well fed or hungry.
And what is the secret that he's learned?
Of contentment.
I can do all things through him who gives me strength, right? Yeah, the contentment comes from trust. The contentment comes from I know whatever is going on in my life, I can do all things through Christ. I saw.
And it makes me think.
I saw a coffee cup online recently that said, "I can do all things," through a verse taken out of context. And the point being that it wasn't that verse isn't a promise that no matter what you try, as long as you trust in Jesus, you'll do great. It's what Paul says is, even when things are not good, even when I'm struggling, even when I'm hungry, even when I don't have everything I need, I've learned how to be content. And that contentment comes from trust in God. I don't have all the honey I want, right? I don't have a big cache of honey that I can just, scarf down anytime I want to. I've learned how to be content. I've learned to trust in God and trust in his goodness and trust in his love and his work for me. And I think that's how we learn to prosper. I think that's how we come to this understanding of prosperity. Our understanding of what prosperity looks like broadens if we learn how to trust in God, if we can believe in him and believe in his love and grace. And so what once may not have looked like prosperity to us can kind of take on a new shine. Well, other comments or thoughts? It's 8:30.
I think so far, let me say today's lessons tell us even there's 8 and there's 17, including the 28 25 that we are seeing right now. Probably is telling us, if you indulge in things that is beyond God limits in your life, you pay the price.
Yeah.
You pay the price.
Yeah.
So we should be always, wherever we find ourselves as a Christians, if God is in our hearts and we think that God is with us, whatever we come across in favorable way, we should be appreciating and then thank God for it. Because anything that we indulge in that is beyond our limit, that one, maybe you will say that, God, why? But no, you indulging in because of your lust. You feel of your lust and you indulging in that thing. You don't expect God to save you from that.
Yeah.
You pay the price in a wrong way.
Yeah.
So,
and I think we always can find ways in our lives to be grateful and to see God's blessings and to see even the negative things as opportunities to grow and to learn and to depend on him more. And that's not to say seeking out those negative things or ignoring when we're living in hardship. That's none of that's required. But to find ways to say thank you and to be grateful people is I think really important. I think one of the most important spiritual characteristics we can develop is gratitude. Everything, I've heard it said before that in Christianity, salvation is grace and everything else is gratitude. God has saved us through Christ, and all the here's what you ought to do and here's what you shouldn't do. It all is gratitude. It all comes from our desire to be thankful to him for what he's done for us. So anyway, hope you enjoy your time tomorrow, however you're going to celebrate, whatever you're going to be doing, enjoy that. And don't forget to say thank you to God for the people around you and the blessings that he gives you. And see you soon.
All right. Good night. Bye. Have a good
Everything.